I mean, I'll tell you this. When I came up in the GOP and George W. Bush was president and I worked in that administration, this would not have been tolerated. When I was working for Bush, when I was working for Cheney, when John McCain was my mentor, when John Boehner was Speaker of the House, when Paul Ryan was Speaker of the House, these types of folks, love or hate them, would not have tolerated this sort of widespread culture among their acolytes. This is not the Republican Party they wanted to raise. But make no mistake, Chris, this stuff existed on the fringes, but now it's not the fringes anymore. It's the core. It's the rotting core of the party. And there's two things you can do, though, in response to this news. One is, of course, you can hold the mirror up to the people who wrote these messages. That's fair. That's fine. And some of them are being held accountable. But I think more significantly, we don't just look at these young Republicans. We hold the mirror up to the people who are their mentors. That's why it wouldn't have been tolerated when I came up in the Republican Party, because I had mentors who would have policed it. My butt would have been kicked out of the door. I wouldn't have had jobs in those places. But their mentors are condoning it. And it goes all the way to the top. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And I would go as far as to say this, Chris, these guys, like J.D. Vance, are grooming young men in the Republican Party. They are grooming them for cruelty. They are raising these weak little loser incels to go attack people who are weaker, to go attack people because of their race, to go attack people because of their religion. That type of bullying displays total weakness, but that's now become the core culture in the Republican Party that I once was in.
Yeah, the distinction you make there, I think, Jennifer, that's an interesting one. So you can imagine that people 15, 10 years ago might have had exchanges like this, although I do think some of the, like, I love Hitler stuff is a particular kind of weird Nazi-aligned subculture that's really flourished. But I agree with Miles that you wouldn't have had big Republicans defending it, right? Paul Ryan, they would have been like, this is terrible. And you even saw that from some. To me, Vance is really the fulcrum here. Like, for him to come out and be like, do this sort of gaslighting and use the term young boy. It's like, I have a young boy. Yeah. He's 11 years old. Yeah. He's not a state senator in Vermont.
Well, here's two things about J.D. Vance. Number one, he used to say Trump is America's Hitler.
Right.
So he has regressed. And then number two, he is married to a woman of Indian descent.
Yes.
He has mixed race children.
Yes.
So to all of the MAGA voters out there, if this man will not defend his wife and will not defend his kids, do you think he gives a crap about you or anything to do with you? What I see with J.D. Vance and all of the people around Trump is the minute they capitulate to him, they give it just an inch, they completely morally collapse. Everybody that comes into his orbit becomes a worse person. Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance. I mean, I think Stephen Miller was probably born terrible, but he's gotten worse, and that's how low that bar was. The moral rot on display that we see, this is intentional. They are flexing the authoritarian muscle, and they all have to make up for something because the strong man is frail. The strong man has cankles. He's got bruises on his hands. He's got dementia. So now his acolytes are coming out acting like big tough guys to try to keep the facade up because there are fissures all over the place in the MAGA movement right now.
Well, and one of the fissures, and this is something that I've sort of followed, is just that there have been these factional fights, Miles, about how what's too extreme, right? And there's been these factional fights about essentially sort of avowed neo-Nazis, people who are sympathetic to Hitler, who talk about, make jokes about how the Holocaust was made up, things like that, and have a real following in conservative politics and have been in a war, a factional war, inside conservative politics about whether they get to be sort of part of the movement. And one of the things that I've watched develop is that they're winning that war. Like, I'm watching it happen because I follow this pretty closely, but the people who are the most extremist, the most kind of Nazi-aligned, have been kind of winning the battle of whether we get to be in this movement or not.
Oh, they're completely winning, Chris. I mean, they've pushed people like me, what we used to characterize as the rational faction of the Republican Party, out to the fringes. That's the reality. The thing is totally flipped. The rotting fringes are now the rotting core, and the people that used to be that rational center are out on the fringes. I mean, you can hardly identify Republican members of Congress anymore that are willing to speak out against this stuff. I mean, genuinely, we at least, 5 or 6 years ago had a few reliable Republican members of Congress that would stand up against this stuff during the Trump administration, and 10 years ago, scores and scores of them. I mean, the population is dwindling so that rational Republicans are now a completely endangered species at the risk of becoming extinct. And to your point, Chris, look no further than this side by side. The President of the United States criminalizes criticism, right? He says that people like me, for criticizing him, are guilty of treason. And yet, the immigration policy that was just leaked today from this administration would reward and provide safe harbor to people who express racist and bigoted views abroad in European countries and are looking to seek refuge in the United States. You cannot make this up. They are punishing people for free speech in this country, but saying to extremists and violent bigots overseas, hey, if you need a place to stay, come to America. What does that tell young people coming up in the Republican Party about the United States of America that their party wants to build?
Yeah, and 35-year-old professionals are not responsible for what they say because they're kids, according to J.D. Vance, but Ramesa Oztark, a Turkish grad student, is kidnapped off the street and threatened with deportation for an op-ed she co-wrote. I want to, Jennifer, Mike Davis. Mike Davis is someone people should know about because he's sort of a figure in right-wing MAGA lawyer circles. He clerked for Justice Gorsuch, if I'm not mistaken. Hakeem Jeffries posted Elise Stefanik, or Mike Lawler and Elise Stefanik with some of these young Republicans, and Mike Davis retweets it with calling him George Soros's house slave, as if to kind of make the point, right? Like, it's not behind closed doors and chats. There's a sort of reveling in the disgusting.
I think this is a part of their authoritarian play. The rules don't apply to us.
Yes.
We're going to rub it in your face. And Megyn Kelly said it best on her podcast. We haven't felt the same since Obama. And something broke in white people that had some racism.
Some white people.
Some white people had some racism stewing in them in communities that I grew up in a totally red state. And something broke in them when there was a competent, wonderful black president, maybe they disagreed with, that was eating off the china, sleeping in the bed at the White House. And I remember in Oklahoma City when Obama came, he was greeted with Confederate flags in Oklahoma City. So all of this was there. And you remember that John McCain debate where John tried to tone that woman down. It was all there. None of this surprises me. As a person that lived in a red state, I always looked for the federal government to temper all of this. And to Miles's point, now that this is mainstream, it's just devastating.
Miles Taylor, Jennifer Welsh, good to have you both. Thank you so much. Coming up, as some of the right refuse to reject the racist Republican group text, New York Governor Kathy Hochul will join me right here to talk about it. But first, Congressman Jamie Raskin on what to make of the latest Republican moves to cling to power. Next.
Asthma. Does it have you missing out on what you love with who you love? Get back to better breathing with Fasenra, an add-on treatment for eosinophilic asthma taken once every 8 weeks.
/Sparks. La 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 la. La 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 la. Sur La Table has it all. Even if your idea of la yum 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 is la open the box. Sur La Table, for those who love to cook in the kitchen.
I had no idea I was still paying for in-flight Wi-Fi until I finally checked my credit card statement, 14 months and $600 later. That's why I created Rocket Money, an app that shows you all your subscriptions in one place. See something you no longer
later and 4 interest-free payments at safelight.com.
Safe Light Repair, Safe Light Replace.
Liberty Mutual customized my car insurance, so I only pay for what I need. What a great day. What an okay day. What a messed up.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
It's a rare thing when someone you've been with for so long finds a way to surprise you. It's like discovering E-Trade's easy-to-use platform now comes with the power of Morgan Stanley.
Mom can speak walrus?
You've got a Pepto predicament, Ace. You overdid it on the loaded fries. Undo it with Pepto Fast Melt.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
When you overdo it, undo it with Pepto-Bismol.
Great pair of lungs. Shame about your swollen gums. You need Parodontax, clinically proven to help reverse 4 signs of early gum disease. For gum experts.
La 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 la.
La 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 la.
Sur La Table has it all. Even if your idea of la yum 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 is la open the box. Sur La Table, for those who love to cook in the kitchen.
Some mornings the road calls for more than just horsepower. It asks for intention, precision, a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. It's the details, how you carry the moment that sets the tone. This isn't just about looking sharp, it's about feeling ready. Crafted for motion, built with purpose, designed to perform from sunrise to last light. Collars & Co. Presence starts here. Try for yourself today at collarsandco.com.
La 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 la.
La 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 la.
Sur La Table has it all. Even if your idea of la yum 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 is la open the box. Sur La Table.
Wallets.
Like a couple of $1 million in a month.
Do you care about these people you're scamming?
Yes, I do care.
You do care?
Yes.
Because a lot of people are losing their life savings, elderly people who fall for this.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry for that.
Why do you keep doing it?
CNN senior investigative correspondent Keelan Lau joins me now. He really sounded brokenhearted. What more can you tell us about the scammers behind these calls?
Well, when we reviewed police reports, Anderson, we found that a lot of this money, the scammed cash, really does end up overseas, and it funnels into Africa and Southeast Asia. So for the local cops, we talked to local police in Iowa and in Minnesota. It is very difficult to try to ever retrieve that cash and get the victims their money back. So that's the real heartbreak here, is that it is so hard to make people whole. The other thing to keep in mind is that experts say that some of the people who are making these direct phone calls, perhaps the gentleman who was talking to me on the phone, that scammer, oftentimes they are victims of human trafficking and forced labor. I did try to follow up and talk to that guy, see if he would speak to me further, and he never called me back. So we don't know much about him, Anderson.
Fascinating. Thank you. Ahead, there's more breaking news. The White House budget director warns of thousands of shutdown-related layoffs, and a federal judge says not for now. Reaction and a look at his new book from business journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin. Also, a Chicago...
Or they don't want to swear her in until this whole other issue is resolved. Why? Because she's the 218th signature on the Epstein discharge petition. So how do they want to resolve it? They want to resolve it by trying to pull one of the other Republican members off of the discharge petition. I mean, it just goes to show their basic contempt for America. They're willing to shut the government down in order to prevent rescinding their terrible health care cuts against the people. And they're also willing to shut Congress down until they can be certain that they can avoid disclosing the Epstein files that they'd originally demanded.
You've got Donald Trump has basically sent the order out to Republican-controlled state legislators to do this thing that it has only been done once in my career covering politics. Karl Rove did it in Texas under George W. Bush, a mid-decade redistrict, with the idea being that, like, look, we kind of know that it's likely Democrats would win back the House. You know, thermostatic public opinion, backlash, inflation's still high. The president's polling at 40% approval. what if we change who our voters are? So we could just change the rules of the game so that they can't win it back. And that itself seems like a fundamental sort of diffusing of the mechanism of democratic feedback.
Look, what they want to do today, it's very clear from this Voting Rights Act case out of Louisiana, is to dismantle more than a dozen majority African American districts without fear of being overturned in court, because the Voting Rights Act will no longer allow the race-conscious remedy of saying you have just struck down a majority black district because it's majority black. So they could get rid of the only majority African-American district in Mississippi, that's Benny Thompson's district. They could get rid of the only two majority African-American districts in Alabama, that's Terry Sewell and Shamari Figures, that you could just go right down the line. And so those majority black districts that have been created under the Voting Rights Act over the last several decades have been a bastion against lily white right-wing congressional delegations coming out of the Deep South. And now they are targeting that directly. It's an extremely dangerous moment. They already got rid of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act in Shelby County versus Holder in 2013. Now they want to get rid of Section 2. And the Republicans, rather the conservatives on the court, the MAGA on the court, are asking the question whether the Voting Rights Act itself in Section 2 violates equal protection under the 14th Amendment. In other words, this is like the voting parallel to affirmative action. Affirmative action is now, according to MAGA, race discrimination against white people, just to say, hey, our university has discriminated against blacks and Hispanics forever, and now we want to make outreach into those communities. No, that is race discrimination now. And they want to say the same thing with respect to voting. If you've had a lily white delegation coming out of Mississippi or Alabama and you create a majority African-American district, they want to say that is reverse racism. That's discrimination against white people.
And we should note, I mean, it's not a complete jump between the first story we did tonight and this story, right? You've got these private chats that have leaked. You look at some of the words people say, and you can say, well, people might say things in terribly or out of context in a group chat, although I think some of those things, there's no context in which they're defensible. But also you got a government that really is, I mean, sometimes I wonder if people understand that the complete assault on all civil rights law that's happening by this government right now.
Yes. Well, look, those people who were in those chat rooms making jokes about Nazism and Hitler and racist jokes at the expense of the African-American community and so on, those people are going to grow up to be the leaders of the Republican Party in state legislatures across the land. And what they're basically being told by the Supreme Court is, as long as you don't allow any of your racist filth and humor to get into the formal legislative process, right, you can go ahead and create an all-white, a completely white legislative delegation coming out of Alabama or Mississippi or South Carolina or you name it.
Yeah, keep it in the private chat, and then you could go do whatever you want to do with the representation of your fellow Americans in your state. Congressman Jamie Raskin, thanks for your time.
You bet.
Still ahead, we're going to dig into that Supreme Court case, why the conservative Supreme Court seems like it may be contemplating further weakening the Voting Rights Act, what Americans should do to make their voices heard. Next.
I got this wow skin from Olay Super Serum Body Wash with 5 powerful ingredients to transform my skin from dull to luminous. I then use new Super Serum Body Lotion to stay luminous.
Significant efforts and special equipment, in their words, will be needed to recover additional bodies. Now, the remains of 2 more hostages were transferred just hours ago, bringing the total number to 9. There's increasing anger in Israel that more bodies have not been returned and that Hamas may be reneging on the deal. It also seems far from giving up power and is now moving, in fact, to reassert control over Gaza. CNN's Jeremy Diamond has the story, and we want to warn you some of the video we're about to see is graphic.
In the middle of a public square in Gaza City, 8 bound and blindfolded men are dragged out and forced to kneel. One by one, armed Hamas militants take up their positions behind them, aiming rifles at their heads before opening fire. All 8 men fall to the ground, executed. This is part of the grim reality of post-ceasefire Gaza, as Hamas forces say they are carrying out a, quote, comprehensive security operation to root out those they accuse of collaborating with Israel. With these bodies, Hamas also re-establishing the element of fear it has used to rule Gaza for years, as it looks to reassert its dominance over a decimated Gaza Strip. Amid its ceasefire with Israel, Hamas is now putting on a show of force in Gaza's streets, attacking other armed groups, from gangs backed by Israel to powerful clans that have a history of clashing with Hamas. The Dormush clan, which denies collaborating with Israel, has accused Hamas of killing nearly 30 members of its family in the last week. U.S. Central Command, which is monitoring the ceasefire, urging Hamas to immediately suspend violence and shooting at innocent Palestinian civilians in Gaza.
It's going to hold up.
The violence is a reminder of unresolved issues at the heart of President Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza. Hamas's handover of power, the establishment of an international security force, and Hamas's disarmament, all still being negotiated.
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
How will you do that?
I don't have to explain that to you. But if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
The ceasefire deal already proving fragile. Hamas has only returned the remains of 9 of 28 deceased hostages so far. Some are pending DNA testing, and Israel says one body Hamas handed over was not that of a hostage. Hamas says Gaza's destruction is complicating matters. Israel has continued killing Palestinians, at least 15 since the ceasefire went into effect, according to the UN's Human Rights Office. The Israeli military says it has fired on Palestinians who approached Israeli lines in Gaza. In the ruins of Gaza, an uncertain future and a long road ahead. Jeremy Diamond, CNN, Tel Aviv.
Still ahead, a report that members of young Republican groups, all adults, exchanged a series of racist, anti-Semitic, and hate-filled messages. Vice President J.D. Vance dismisses it as chat among, as he puts it, a bunch of kids.
And I really don't want us to grow up in a country where a kid telling a stupid joke, telling a very offensive stupid joke, is cause to ruin their lives.
We'll have more on that, and we're just moments away from CNN's Town Hall with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, hosted by Caitlin Collins. We'll check in with Caitlin ahead.
If Tony Shalhoub calls and says, I want to eat bread, what is the answer besides yes?
This is my first time in Sao Paulo, my first time in Brazil.
We're bringing two cultures together with a beef patty croissant.
It's not just flavor, it's memory and migration on a plate. It's really special connecting with all of you.